Okay, so welcome guys to Breast Property Rants for, what is it, the 28th of October today. And so welcome and great for joining us. So actually I've got a lot to cover today. It was amazing. It started out doing a bit of research. I had a topic and the topic just expanded, but actually it's really good stuff. And actually week by week as I do these, I'm actually quite surprised at how actual things are quite positive, still quite positive. I was expecting things to have dropped off a little bit. Now they have started to drop off, there's no doubt about that, but we're already in October, we're almost in November, and so things I would have thought would have slowed down considerably, but in fact they haven't, and that's good news for property prices. It's good news for landlords. And in actual fact, it's good news for everyone, because the last thing we all want is, unemployment going up and all these sort of recession associated issues. Now, obviously there is going to potentially be hell to pay later on. And that's something that we're going to be covering in next week's on Tuesday at 5 p.m. If you're interested, the autumn webinar series. The next subject is unlimited cash or almighty crash. And we're going to look at the QE, the printing of money, and how that's going to affect. So make sure you don't miss that webinar, because that's going to be a really good one. And I think that's something that, it's a question that we're all asking ourselves, and it's very opinionated, So today, what are we going to do? UK's Hodgepodge housing policy. Just sort of my Brett's rant on that. We're going to look at housing reports and predictions. We're going to look at the inflation predictions up until 2025. Local lockdowns, are they going to cause a double dip? All right, and then Brexit, will we get a deal? I've been very opinionated on this over the whole of Brexit. London super prime, are they selling or are people ignoring them? Some interesting stuff there. As well as Manchester, it might surprise you what's going on there, and actually what some of the news that's being reported around the world. And then looking at lettings and management, the evictions, tier 1 and 2, and what's happening with those, just so you're up to date. Cool, so let's get started. So look, first of all, actually before we get started, if you haven't done, subscribe, make sure you got comments. We've got the Facebook and YouTube and all that. If you're on one of those channels, feel free to write comments and I can actually respond to them live. So we've got all that hooked up. And that can be on anything, if you want opinions, off the cuff, whatever, happy to answer anything. So, I want to get really interactive, and that goes all the way through. So so make sure you jump on, really help if you do as well, press the like button, because obviously we're looking to build the channel, spending a lot of time doing this research and presenting and doing lots of webinars. So I'm really, I'm really excited about it. And actually it's great. I've got a team around me now. If you look back, it's funny, I look back at 6 months ago when I first started doing the live streaming. I had a blank screen. I was literally just on the wall over there, blank screen, and we've sort of evolved it to have this, and I've now got proper software and audio and everything now. So it's amazing, the evolution, and it feels good actually, and hopefully you guys are really enjoying the content as well. So let's get started. So my rant, UK's Hodgepodge housing policy. Do you know, if I ran my business the way the government has run the housing policy over the last 10 years, we would be bankrupt. Surprisingly, the housing market isn't bankrupt. The housing market isn't. But the amazing thing is, I think there's been so many U-turns and changes that have been ill thought out, and the consequences of those, just have unintended consequences. And really, this hodgepodge sort of approach where we want to stimulate, let's just take away stamp duty. So now we've got all this backlog that we can't get through, and it's unlikely, if you haven't bought your property yet, getting solicitors or getting in. It's such a reactionary way of doing things, rather than actually coming up with a really good plan and then working that plan, which is how I think things should be. So, that's sort of my opinion. And I think, it's backed up in a lot of the stuff that we're doing. These things are, like even on evictions, U-turns, one day it's there, the next day it's not. There's no introduction to it. It's just on every aspect. There's no warning, there's no consultation, or no real consultation with the industry. And even when there is, if the government wants to do something, they may do consultation, but are they going to listen to it? Probably not, and that's just the nature of the industry. But I think that's the nature of politics now. So I don't think it's only the housing industry that is having these issues. It is politicians. They are just not efficient leaders, and that's the real problem here. Okay, So yeah, so look, this is just a huge delays in Hodgepodge policy undermining the property market. It is, you've got the cladding risk, you've got you've got cladding, you've got the solicitors can't get enough, or conveyancers can't get through in time, the lenders can't do the application. So there's so many things that are just being dealt with in this ridiculous manner, rather than planning it out, consulting, introducing it, and actually seeing how the consequences turn out, and then maybe adjusting it to that. But hopefully you get it right up front. It's no way to run a business. It's no way to run a housing market. But we're stuck with it, and it's unlikely to change because, let's face it, politicians are getting paid too much. They have too much power, and really there's no one holding them to account anymore. That's the nature of not just this. This is not just the UK. We're seeing this all the way across the world. It's unfortunate. So yeah, that's just my rant for today. So house prices rant. Look, I mean, as much as it pains me, the news is all about house prices. It's every week there's 10, 20, 30 articles about house prices, and all the things that actually matter, to a degree, there's hardly anything spoken of, or there's it's kept out in the back thing. But house prices is definitely the thing that most people go for. Interestingly, at the top end now, an amazing prediction: house price growth to reach 17.5% by the end of the year. Wow, yeah. So this is really moving, it's a moving company. But they're basically saying it's already grown 7%, which is correct, and it's going to grow a further 8.8% in the last quarter. That's a big prediction. You know what? There may be some truth to it too, and I think that's going to be the interesting thing. But the amazing thing is, most people were predicting house prices to drop. Most people were predicting, quite a big drop. You've got, for instance, CBRE. They predicted 13.8% drop. They've corrected it now to be roughly 10% drop next year. So, which is quite interesting because, that's a big turnaround. Now, you might say, well, they've just put it back a year. That's fine, but you've got to account for the potential 7.5% to probably up to 15, percent of, or 7.5%, as they're saying there. So there is a lot of experts predicting all sorts of stuff. I do think even if they go up this year, I would have thought they would have started to drop off or ease off now. They haven't. There's obviously a lot more momentum, and there's a lot more things going through in terms of the pipeline and that. And maybe that will see us through until the new year. And maybe this stamp duty thing actually is going to get us through that 6 months into spring. Now if you look at it, a lot of companies are really just trying to get through winter, and that's the focus for them. And let's face it, you can't knock them on that. Okay, so Zoopla have released their Home Track report, and basically, if you have a look at this, new sales agreed versus the same month in 2019. Now, obviously, that was the lockdown, so that's considerably down. But October is the surprise one there. Actually, July, August is probably a bit of a surprise too, that it was 62%, up on last year. But if you remember, the last things of last year it was Brexit coming up, the big Brexit vote. So everything stopped for that October, November, December, and then December 10th, I think, was the election. It was a clear win, and then things started to free up. But of course, then everything was shut down for Christmas, and and we moved on. But 3 key takeaways: 3% year on year. So this is Home Track or Zoopla. They're saying 3%. There's some people saying 7%. Somewhere in the middle, probably about right. 50% size of sales pie. So that's a 50% growth. 18% increase in sales inventory compared to last year. So all those stats are looking really good, and really positive. Now you might just be saying, well, hold on a sec. Isn't that just kicking the can down the road? And I keep saying this. It could well be. But I don't think it is. And that's a couple of, as we sort of develop over the next few weeks, I think we'll start to see what happens in the last quarter with, if things are going to drop off, how far they're going to drop off, how many people are unemployed, how many people put on the new furlough scheme. There's lots and lots of stuff that's coming out that I think will determine how we perform, after this. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Guys, just a reminder, any questions, if you just joined us, jump in the comments. I'm happy to answer, things live online. So by all means, type them in and I can get to your question as soon as I can. So headline measures mask increasingly polarized market. And the point I want to make here was the polarization of the market is about wealthy demographics and less wealthy demographics. Yeah. So what you're finding is that a lot of the areas that are growing is where the wealthier are, not necessarily the poorer. And that is unfortunate. That is, for me, a failure in society, fundamental failure in society. And this is just not the UK. This is across all markets pretty much, yeah? Where, there is this thing where people are, the poor are getting poorer, the rich are getting richer. And really the question is, where do you sit, And where you sit, I think, depends on how many assets you've got or what the value of those assets are. Capital appreciation and cash flow assets, yeah? Which are going to put you in this side, the wealthy side, or the poor side. And of course, one of the things with this channel, I really want to focus you on creating wealth, yeah? Not through hype and BS, but actually from really good principles. And I think, if that's what you can get out of this channel, then I've done my job. So look, so that's quite interesting. One thing that I will say, yeah? Falling house prices, not if Boris can help. Now, this talks about realistically 5% deposits for first-time buyers, all that sort of stuff. But the interesting thing I find this, but it will inflate the housing bubble. Of course, they're assuming it's a housing bubble, and pile risk on the finance industry. This is the challenge with all this sort of stuff. Okay, pile risk on. Yeah, there's more risk in a 95% mortgage because people can get in, if prices drop. But for the most part, people don't buy and sell houses straight away. A drop in the value doesn't really stop them from doing anything. But the benefit of somebody owning their own home is massive. So for goodness sake, I'd rather have an inflating bubble because the first-time buyers are getting on the ladder than not having them on the ladder and having this disparity between wealthy and poor, just get worse. So for me, good on you, Boris, go for it. Actually make that happen because, I've always said that 5% deposit is absolutely critical. But I think more important than that, was the comment, Boris will not let house prices drop. And I think that's the key takeaway here. I don't think they will. Yeah, I think most countries around the world, their prime ministers, their politicians, they don't want massive drops in house prices. So they're doing whatever they can to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, and I think that's one of the key things here now. This is a change in policy. We used to talk about fiscal policy, monetary policy, raising loan interest rates, government spending and things like that. That's still the case today. But the issue was if the government spent too much and got into too much debt, then that potentially, send them into austerity for years and years and years. Look at post-World War II. That could happen. But if you look at the US, that hasn't happened necessarily. They've been able to actually get out of it. And part of that is, and we'll talk about this next week on Tuesday night, is that because I think technology is a deflationary pressure on things. And I think that really is causing a lot of deflation. But, we'll see. We could be wrong. But I think the playing field has changed and it is changing. And I think economics isn't adjusting quick enough to those changes. The base core fundamentals are still the same, but I think the application is what has changed. Okay, so let's talk about inflation. So inflation right now, 0.7%. Now, we're after that 2% target. Okay, that's the ideal growth rate for a developed country. And the interesting thing is 0.7, that's not high. Yeah, and this is a change over 12 months. That's, that's fine, no problems whatsoever. There in terms of, because we're worried about, what we're really worried about is inflation going to go up massively or come down massively, in other words, deflation, or worse, stagflation, in other words, nothing happens. We want to grow it around that 2%, which is the target. Now, if you have a look at this, what we're talking about, this is from 2000, yeah, all the way to 2025. Now, if we look at that last flat bit is literally 2%. So the predictions from the ONS, the Office of National Statistics in the UK, are saying that they're predicting it to be 2%, which basically means they're not predicting runaway inflation. They're not predicting deflation. They're predicting a good 2%. Now, you could say, well, hold on a sec, that's absolute rubbish, and they're just saying that. But if we remember, the ONS is supposed to be, well, the Office of Budget Responsibility is supposed to be separate, and they check a lot of these sort of things. And so it could be right, could be wrong, yeah? But I think even if you look at long-term interest rates that you and I can get on our mortgages, they're not showing massive interest rate increases or necessarily decreases. However, the Bank of England has talked about potentially dropping interest rates to below zero and trialling that out. Hasn't really worked in other places that much or as effectively as it could, but it may well, help. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of that. I don't think it's going to do, massive stimulus, because I don't think it'll get to you and I to go out and spend. Yeah, but that's my thoughts anyway. Okay, so let's move on. So, local lockdowns stifling jobs recovery, and I think this is actually a reality. Yeah, and the reason I say this is because I think, look, the real problem we've got right now is if unemployment rate shoots up, then the recession is going to take longer to come out of, and that could increase our chances of a double dip. Yeah, and this is one of the things that I think we've got to be careful of, is that we don't head into a double dip, even though reality is we probably haven't come out of the first dip yet. But if you look at China's growing at 5% now this year, which is an extraordinary turnaround from where it was. Yeah, so it can be done, and I think that's the important thing. It can be a V-shaped recovery. Yeah. Now you may say no, but they're spending too much money, all this sort of stuff. Actually, that is a way that they can do it. If you keep the money supply there, you keep money, effectively propping it up where it would have gone down. Yeah. Then the question is how do you pay it back? And obviously that's a lot of debt. So that's another question for another day. But my fear is these local lockdowns throw things out. I mean, one of the things is in London right now, if you have a look at London streets, they're desolate. Compared to what they were, London has lost its vibe. Yeah, so a lot of people are saying, financial collapse and all this sort of stuff, and really playing the media, headlines for that. The reality is most people are still working at home. I was chatting to Nat West today, and they're all working from home. They've been told they're there until spring. Lloyd's have been told there until spring. There's a lot of employees who are saying, stay at home. Don't come to work. So of course the city centre, London, it doesn't have the tourists, it doesn't have the people working there. Yeah, it's desolate. Now that will cause a lot of businesses to drop. That's going to happen. That is going to happen. But the reality is that something that is long term, and that means that all these people are unemployed? Not really. I'm surprised at how many businesses, that I know that have already pivoted and things are still going well. And to be fair, I think that above all else just shows the resilience of the economy and the people that work in that economy and the businesses. Now, sure, a lot of businesses are going to have to be jettisoned. So there'll be businesses that are unable to pivot, and yeah, they may have got stimulus through bounce back loans and all that sort of stuff, and they'll be written off. But that's change, that's disruption. That's happening without a global recession. Yeah, and that's, if you look at, a lot of what I'm talking about in my videos now, it's disruption, it's recession, it's change, it's all this sort of stuff, it's AI, it's, because that is a big theme that we're going to see over and over again in the next sort of decade and probably beyond that. So that's interesting. Do I think we're going to double dip? Look, I think as long as the government stays with the same path they've been taking of stimulating things, and sure, I think the stimulus will change now. It won't be a stimulus where it's a broad-based stimulus where everybody gets it without any question. It'll be, right, we're supporting this area, this industry, this, but not this. And I think what will happen is a lot of industries that are flagged as being, they're not going to recover, they won't be getting any stimulus, and they will have to shut up shop, So unemployment rate is still going to increase, I think, so that's not going to go away. All right, so let's talk about Brexit. Oh, I just realised that says London property hotspots. Sorry, guys. But look, Brexit. I think one of the key ones with breakfast. Brexit deal hangs in the balance, says EU Council President. And look, I've been saying this for a while. I think the whole thing with this Brexit is that we're going to see lots and lots of manoeuvring, negotiation, tactics, all that sort of stuff, right until the last dot. The last day of the last thing. And they will get and it won't actually be the last day because they've got to get it through Parliament effectively, but it'll be the last day of the negotiations when they'll come up with something. I don't think it'll be very impressive, but it'll be enough politically to show, that we're interested in. And interestingly, what came out today, Gove says UK has 66% chance of Brexit deal amid breakthrough, So, hey, we've gone from most people are saying we're not going to, there's no deal Brexit, prepare for no deal Brexit. We're not, they're not negotiating, to now we've got a 66% chance. You know, that's not too bad. Yeah, that's in fact, at this stage of the negotiations, that's almost a certainty. So just watch, and we'll see what this says about that. So Flavis Mesa. Okay, so what? Just let me. So what do you think of new builds in Battersea, London? What would be the price worth paying for 2-bed flat close-ish to Battersea Power Station? Look, I've had a challenge. I have a problem in a lot of these sort of places. So for instance, Battersea, we haven't sold anything. We had the opportunity to sell there really, really early on. I backed out of it because I felt so many developers were there and there was so many properties coming to market that it was going to flood the market. And those first tier investors that got in potentially would see their properties drop. You know, I think some of the properties have done well, some of them haven't. Do I think an actual price? I mean, look, for me right now, I don't know what price. You'd have to look. Look, I think you can get some steals. I know we've had a few clients who bought there, and I think the challenge they've got is they didn't have the ability to flip them. So now they're really struggling to try and get out of those contracts or have to complete on them. Do I think, it's a good area? I think it's a fantastic area. My concern was the prices they launched. When we initially looked at prices, these are the prices. When they launched, the prices come out there like 3 months later, and I was kind of like, hold on, that's not the prices. That's what they're worth. This is what they're thinking. So my concern is, did they push the prices up? And by the time you complete there, I just think the whole thing was very ambitious, which I loved, but I'm not sure how much money people really made. I've heard stories that, oh yeah, it did really well, bought this at a steal and all that sort of stuff. I just didn't see it. So, but I do think it's a fantastic area. Fundamentals wise, the whole place is getting, once that tube station gets in there, then I think you're laughing. So yeah, hopefully that helps, mate. But look, it's like anything. If you can get it at the right price, it's in a fantastic area. There's huge money getting spent, huge amount of development. The question is what is the right price, And that depends on how close it is to the power station, how close it is to the train, how close it is to Clapham Junction, or what's it called? I've forgotten the name of the bloody place. Across the road. But yeah, look, I think it's a great area, but my concern was there's too much built too quickly, and that was my reason for staying away from that area for the most part. So yeah, hopefully that helps, mate. Cool. So let's move on to the London property hotspots rant. So I thought it was interesting because I've been started to talk about London again and the areas, and I've said, maybe not east this time, but look west, where the sun, rises, sun sets, because there's lots happening there. We've got a couple of developments out there now we're marketing and that. The interesting thing is, and I thought one of the things with fundamentals is they always start with the best fundamentals. Yeah, and most people have been sitting there saying, oh, London's terrible, London's not working. Well, you know what? More money spent on 10 million plus properties this year than in 2019. Yeah. Now, there's a couple of things. Yeah. The first thing is Brexit happened last time. Yeah. So we had all that stuff. So that did stop things. And we have had, there is stuff going on now where overseas buyers potentially have a 2%. Hasn't been brought into law yet, but they've said they're going to do it. But these are super prime, and these are the big end of the market. So when this market moves, then the rest of the market tends to follow. Yeah, So I think it is an amazing thing from that perspective. This is already kicking off. This is already happening. It hasn't gone away. And I think too many times the media really go, and they're saying one thing, but actually the reality is that something else is happening. And I see this all the time, actually this is a good question from Rachel. So has demand for London property by investors from China dropped because it's harder for Chinese to take money out of China? You know what? I think, has it got harder? It's got harder for them, yes. But it's amazing how much of the market is actually Chinese based now. I remember back when we first moved to Singapore in 2012, it was pretty much Singapore, Hong Kong, or probably Hong Kong, Singapore, and Malaysia were the three sort of Southeast Asian countries. China, I think, there may have been a few, but not really. So in the last sort of, 8 years that we've been here, China has now gone to pretty much number one. Hong Kong is still pretty big. A lot of our Hong Kong clients have kicked back in now. A lot of our Singapore clients are buying again. Malaysians are starting to, we're starting to have conversations around this area again. So we're seeing people come back, and we have been seeing them for the last, realistically, since January. It stopped through the lockdown. But of course, the great thing about overseas investors right now is the pound's low. And I think most people expect when we get through the other side of Brexit and coronavirus and all that sort of stuff, then the pound potentially will increase, and you'll get not just the property price increase, but you'll also get the currency increase, which is a good thing. So are we seeing it drop? No, it's not dropping by any stretch. What's happened, I think it's taken a long time for the agents in China, the UK agents in China, to establish themselves and get their markets working. But now that's happening. And so actually a lot of properties are getting sold to, and if you're talking about zone 1 and 2, that sort of area, probably 50% go to overseas investors. Sorry, no. Zone 1 and 2, probably 70%. Zone 3, 4, 5 is probably 50%. And then you've got Manchester and you've got the Birminghams and those sort of places where they can buy as well, which are probably, I'd say 30 or 40%. So there is still these guys buying. They haven't gone away. Yeah. But the thing I'm amazed at, because I was sitting there going, hold on, things are going to be pretty tough for the UK market, for my sales business in the UK. But what I've noticed is the UK buyers are coming back, because what's happened, this little, surge has given the confidence for them to move some of their properties on, or to take some money out and actually go and buy more. So in actual fact, things that we're looking actually at having a really good, I won't say a good year, but a good end to the year, because obviously we had 2 months where nothing got sold. And in fact, we sold stuff the first month in March, and then we had to pretty much, all those people pulled out or didn't proceed. And then of course, April, when the lockdown happened, we didn't even sell anything. We weren't even trying to, we stopped the marketing, all that. But now things have gone back, and we're back to where we pretty much were last year, coming into Brexit, where everything stopped. Pretty much October, November, December were dead. Yeah, things started to pick up last year, December, and by January it was kicking off again, and then it was all starting to really do well. And then of course, April happened and everything shut down. So yeah, so hopefully it's still happening, and thank goodness it is, because actually London is a world market, Manchester is a world market, Birmingham is a world market now. So as much as the government may want to enforce localised policies and saying localised buyers, actually those markets rely now on those international money, and it's the same reasons. They're going to put their kids to university, they're going to potentially move there themselves. That's the reasons why they're buying there. So yeah. Sorry guys, I just realised the mute was on. So coming on to the overseas investors. It's interesting, because this it leads really well on from Rachel's question, because this is an article today from real estate boom as UK property investors turn to regional cities. So it's interesting. Just watch this. This is just the start of an article.
In the UK, investors who once looked to London for their foothold in property, they are now turning to regional cities instead. One of those cities is Manchester, once seen as the capital's lower-tier northern cousin. Now it's seeing a multi-billion-dollar real estate boom, and Asian investors, you guessed it, have a big stake.
So it's an interesting thing, because they're saying that now, and that was just today or yesterday, I think it was, that come out, that special. Actually, they're probably about 5, even 7 years too late. But it is, there is a lot of people looking back at it. Singapore, if you take Singapore, for instance, Singapore, when they brought in the total debt service ratio, which stopped people borrowing, it made it hard to get the money out of their properties here, the market cooled off. Yeah, and a lot of the UK agents really struggled to sell in Singapore. Now that's started to pick up again. Yeah, Hong Kong picking up, because obviously everyone wants to get their money out of Hong Kong, before China takes over potentially, all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of demand coming from that. But also, China, yeah, it's been hard to get the money out, but they are getting it out and they are buying a lot. By far, China is the biggest, Hong Kong is next, probably Singapore, Malaysia. But the great thing, our Vietnamese, Thailand, those sort of places too are actually starting to pick up now, and we're getting our investors for those. What has dropped off is the Middle Eastern investors. Yeah, so our Middle East side of things really has slowed down a lot because they can't get money out of their property. Their property's dropped 40% there. It really has been decimated there. They've lost jobs. They've had to move back. A lot of that sort of stuff has been going on. So yeah, but look, it is good news. Manchester and Birmingham, okay, because that article could have just been about Birmingham as well. People are, yes, London, Manchester, Birmingham. That's where the lion's share is going, but there's also Liverpool and there's also Leeds and, and a few of the sort of secondaries here. But the problem is if you go outside those areas, the quantum isn't high enough to get lending on for most places. Yeah. So, we've had a few clients who bought outside there, but they had to buy two, at once. So, fine. So let's move on. So lettings and management rant. An interesting thing. So I mentioned, I think last week about we're finally kicking out the tenant who, I don't know how many, 80,000 or something they owe altogether. This was a Wednesday night. On the Thursday, we're kicking them out. And of course, it come out that they changed the rules. The rules are now being questioned, and we weren't able to kick them out. The bailiffs weren't allowed to go in there. And so that's, it's terrible. But the problem you've got now is you can go through court and you can get the court order, but the bailiff can't enforce them to get out if it's under a tier 2 or 3, which is the high or very high of the lockdown side of things. So tier 1, fine. 2, 3, cannot, which is such a pain in the bum because it means that now it's potentially another month or 2 or however long it is. I really feel for these landlords because it is frustrating. And it's not fair to them. This woman has abused the system, totally abused it. Even to the last day, she kept putting this off. So, but yeah, anyway, so evictions, you can't do that right now. Apart from that, and actually, to be fair, we've got very few people going through that process. So anyone who says to you, oh yeah, there's hundreds and thousands and 80,000 people being evicted, we haven't seen it from our database. So part of that is because we mediate and negotiate very early on. We get on top of things. We don't let them just stay and stay and stay. But when people can abuse the law, and this is what this woman has done, she's just abused the law, and the law unfortunately plays that game. Yeah, so it's terrible. Anyway, guys, so that's it for this week. Look, the one thing I mentioned was next week we've got the unlimited wealth. Can we print unlimited cash and avoid an almighty crash? Okay, which is the autumn webinar series. If you go to gladfish.com/webinars, and you can sign up to it there, okay? And really what we're going to be covering there is, exactly that. What are the implications of all this cash that we've been printing, not just in the UK, but across the world, okay? So I think that's really important. The other thing I was going to say is, for any of you guys that don't know, gladfish.com, which is my company, my website, everything an investor needs to build a UK property portfolio, all effortlessly done for you. So the whole thing is about doing it effortlessly for you. We do everything from management to research to cash flows to everything, even pay your bills down to taxation and all that sort of stuff. We'll handle everything for you. And I think that's really important. If you're looking at a way to get into the UK market or to build your portfolio, you can meet with a team and we can work out a strategy and we can change that strategy as we go along. So it's not just a case of, here you go, that's your property, go away. We do everything. We'll manage it, we'll let it, we'll do the whole lot. And it just makes it really easy for you. So particularly, obviously I live in Singapore, and the reason I set this business up was because I wanted to manage my properties and my own portfolio. And of course, so it's set up for someone who's living in wherever it is, but it could be, you live 10 minutes down the road, but you don't have the time to do it yourself. And that's the key distinction. So guys, that's it for me this week. Be sure to like the video, really appreciate it, and it'll help me a lot. Make sure you subscribe so you get regular updates. I'm here every Wednesday. It's now 8:30 Singapore time, Hong Kong time, Malaysia time. It's 12:30 UK time. Obviously the clocks have rolled back. If you're interested, we've got the webinar on that Tuesday 5 p.m, which is the autumn webinar series. We've got another 5 weeks of that going off. But yeah, guys, is there any other questions? If you've got them, fire them through. We've been a bit quiet this week, actually, with the question side of things. So, but Yeah, guys, apart from that, thank you very much for your time. If you've got any questions, if you're not watching this live, you can either, in fact, you can type in the questions anytime and I will answer them. Otherwise, you can send an email to webinars@gladfish.com. And what I'll do is I'll actually respond back. I'll either do it on this forum or I'll respond back on my social media channel with the answer. Yeah, guys, have a fantastic week and we will see you next week. All right, see you later. Bye.